You've probably seen one. A matte black laptop with a tiny red dot in the middle of the keyboard. That's a ThinkPad. They look outdated, even clunky, but these things have a cult following. For decades, ThinkPad users loved them because they never changed. They were reliable, utilitarian tools built for getting real work done. Many businesses swear by them. But Lenovo tried to modernize them. They removed iconic features, trying to be more like an Apple MacBook, and customers hated it. This is how Lenovo almost killed ThinkPad and made fans turn on them. So, what's the deal with these weird machines? ThinkPads are not like other brands. You might have seen the meme. If your company buys you a MacBook, you've got a job until the next funding round. But if they buy you a ThinkPad, you'll probably have job security for 28 years. You're getting a piece of equipment that's designed to last. So why do people love these weird, bulky laptops? The core value proposition of the ThinkPad was simple. Consistency. It was what you could rely on. It was loved because it stood for getting work done fast, reliably, and without friction. The entire design was built around this. Take the TrackPoint, for example. That mini red joystick in the center of the keyboard is its most iconic feature. It allows power users to navigate the cursor without ever taking their hands off the typing position. It looks a bit weird, but it works great. It's muscle memory in action. If you care a lot about efficiency and workflow, you should give one a try. But make no mistake, ThinkPads aren't cheap laptops. Businesses bought them in huge fleets, signing long-term contracts for enterprise-grade Windows machines. They were willing to pay more upfront for durability, IT-friendly features, and consistency across years of deployments. They needed a machine that their employees could use for 5 years without a single complaint. And for decades, the ThinkPad was the ultimate tool laptop. It was boring on purpose. It was designed around muscle memory and built for power users who spent all day on the keyboard. Substance over style, utility down to the finest detail. It was genuinely the Nokia brick of laptops, and that was exactly why people loved it. But the owner of the brand, Lenovo, was looking at the market and saw things differently. They saw Apple and the push for bigger buttonless trackpads, less ports, a sleeker design. Then they got an idea. They decided that the ThinkPad needed a new direction, something more modern and elegant to keep up with the new trends. In 2013, Lenovo was ready to announce their new vision for the ThinkPad lineup. It was the X40 generation, which included models like the T440, the T440S, and the X240. It was the new core family of ThinkPads. They looked mostly the same, but they had a few small critical changes. The biggest were that these 3 buttons were gone. So, what's the big deal? They seem like nothing, but users love these buttons for a critical reason, and now almost everything about this new generation felt wrong. Lenovo removed one of the core parts that made ThinkPads appealing for the sake of looking modern. Lenovo was about to find out exactly how much they had annoyed their most loyal customers by removing those tiny critical buttons, and users would soon uncover even more things wrong with the new laptops. To understand the scale of the rage, you have to understand the TrackPoint workflow. On a ThinkPad, there's the TrackPoint, which is the red nub in the middle. There's the TrackPad, which most laptops have, but there's also something else. The TrackPad has its own buttons, which are actually for the TrackPoint. These let you move or scroll with the red button and click 3 dedicated buttons for clicks, like an alternative mouse setup, but it kept your hands on the keyboard. Lenovo decided to ditch the system for a single giant unified clickpad. They removed the dedicated buttons and instead integrated the click zones into the top edge of the pad. When Lenovo removed these buttons, they destroyed decades of muscle memory and consistency overnight. The rational sounding excuse was that bigger touchpads mattered more in the Windows 8 era, which was all about gestures and swiping. But see, when you're designing around Windows 8, it's already a disaster waiting to happen. But also, there were many more problems with the X8 family. Another issue was that the software-emulated buttons felt ambiguous and caused constant misclicks. You know how every modern car has touchscreens instead of nice, reliable buttons? It's the same thing. Misclicks happened all the time. These things felt imprecise and clunky. The precise middle click used for scrolling was suddenly unreliable. Users were forced to move their thumb way too far, and the TrackPoint often got confused with the rest of the touchpad. Plus, the integrated click mechanism was loud and harsh. Thus, users came up with a new name for these laptops, the Clunkpad. The button was literally the entire pad, and clicking it made an audible noise that users hated. On top of the trackpad issues, the new machines also felt flimsy. They were less durable with screens that cracked if you leaned on them slightly, instead of flexing safely like the older models. But the deepest betrayal was that this change broke the fundamental ThinkPad identity. The entire laptop just didn't feel like a ThinkPad anymore.
To enter a different mindset. I am now using a laptop. I am using something where it's more of a pain in the ass to do the basic tasks that I do. And that is what truly brings this down from classic ThinkPad level to standard toy. That bullshit keyboard puts this Lenovo in a class with the Acers and the Asuses and the Dells and the HPs and all the other crap that no ThinkPad user is ever going to buy because it just doesn't feel like a ThinkPad. The definition of a ThinkPad to me is a machine that just works. It does what I need it to do, it doesn't break down, and it doesn't get in the way of my work. This gets in the way of my work.
It felt like a low-quality copy of a Dell or a MacBook. ThinkPads are bought by people who prioritize a specific utilitarian experience. So when Lenovo chased a MacBook-style trend and made the core ThinkPad usage worse, it felt like a total abandonment of the brand's philosophy and the people who loved it. The backlash was intense and users were furious. It's the worst trackpad I've ever used. The ones in the late 90s were better. It's unaffectionately called the Clunkpad. They were so bad that it created its own modding culture. A huge community of owners started physically swapping out the trackpad hardware in their brand new expensive laptops. They figured out how to fit the pads from the next generation T450 models, which brought back the physical buttons into the T440 era chassis. It was all going wrong, and Lenovo knew it. They needed to make a change and to salvage their brand before they lost everything. Over the past 8 years, we've posted 1,100 videos, yet we still haven't crossed 1 million subscribers. We are close though, and I believe 2026 is the year. And if you subscribe right now, we can actually make that a reality. Lenovo realized they made a mistake. The Clunkpad generation was a marketing and engineering disaster. All the negative feedback was overwhelming and sales suffered. It was clear that Lenovo had completely misjudged their audience and the core identity of the ThinkPad. They had tried to modernize the product before the technology was ready, and they paid the price. Lenovo finally relented. This entire generation was a huge failure, and they knew they had to backpedal immediately. In 2015, just 2 years after the Clunkpad was released, the dedicated TrackPoint buttons returned on the next generation of ThinkPads, and users were happy. The return of the physical buttons was seen as an olive branch to the loyal TrackPoint users. Some tech reviewers even specifically noted that the new design could almost keep up with old models again. Lenovo essentially admitted their mistake by bringing back the top buttons while still keeping a larger touchpad surface. It was a compromise, but it was a functional one that brought back the precision and muscle memory that power users demanded. The problem was solved and the crisis was averted. The ThinkPad line was saved from its own management's hubris. But the story does not end there. Fast forward to 2024 and Lenovo released the ThinkPad P1 Gen 7, and once again it had a worrying sign: no dedicated TrackPoint buttons. Was the Clunkpad cycle about to start all over again? Was Lenovo repeating the same mistake? Well, this time Lenovo seems to have learned its lesson. The P1 Gen 7 uses a different, more advanced technology called a Sensile trackpad. While it is still a buttonless design, the technology is far superior to the original Clunkpad. The new Sensile trackpad is quieter, has a much better feel, and most importantly, results in fewer misclicks. Many users agree that this is significantly more usable and responsive than the disastrous 2013 design. Anyone who has tried a Sensile trackpad knows this is fine for 98% of the use cases. Sensile trackpads are the absolute best you can get on any Windows laptop. Are they perfect? Probably not, but it felt like Lenovo actually made the change with functionality in mind. The fact that the new buttonless design is well received proves that the core concept of unified trackpad was not fundamentally wrong, but the execution in 2013 was a total failure. It took an embarrassing, public, and expensive 2-year reversal for Lenovo to realize that you cannot sacrifice utility for aesthetics without paying a massive price. ThinkPad users were never looking for a better looking machine. They were asking for a better working tool. They went with what they thought customers would like and what was considered modern, but this ignored the decades of design philosophy that made the ThinkPad successful in the first place: reliability and utility. Sometimes the best way forward is not to chase the latest trend, but to stick to the principles that made your product great in the first place. If you can make a modern product while doing so, great, but don't sacrifice your brand identity along the way. Lenovo clearly screwed up, but recently, Dell was caught doing the same thing. They ruined their iconic XPS series chasing Apple, except they took ideas so bad that even Apple had dropped them. Check out this video to learn more, but until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.